All right, I'm gonna do what I always do and mess up my car. It's perfectly functioning and working just great. Seriously though, we're gonna do the next evolution or the next step in suspension. Probably the last step for me. I've made mistakes in the past where I've gone super aggressive, like I did like a JRZ Stage 2 Pro whatever on my F80, and oh gosh, I hated life. I did a lot of solid bushings and stuff like that. So I've made all the mistakes that most of us either haven't made yet or I've already made, and I'm attempting to avoid that. My E92, I think, is a long-term keeper, and I went the most conservative route, which was to do a dyno sleeve setup. So this is the stock shock. I already did the passenger side. This is the stock shock. I can't tell if this is a progressive or linear spring. It certainly looks linear, but it's the beehive style spring. We could go look up in the documentation of whether it's progressive. It doesn't really matter. But what the dyno suspension does is you utilize the stock shock and you knock the stock spring perch off. You use the dyno camber plate on top, and then obviously a new spring with a sleeve that goes over the stock shock to convert it to an adjustable coilover. But as you'll notice, I'm at the bottom, and the car still sits too high for my liking. In order to maintain any kind of semblance of travel and have it comfortably ride, dyno basically limits how low you can go, because we're dealing with a stock shock here. This suspension is really pretty incredible. It's a good old man suspension, and I happen to be an old man, so it's pretty good. So it's a good old man. Now I'm feeling a little hot boy these days, and so I want to get a little more aggressive. I wanted the car to sit a little bit lower. It sits about a ½ inch higher than I'd like in the front. The rear is fine, but the next logical step is to get a true full coilover. The main reason why I wanted to avoid doing a true full coilover outside of just comfort and just normal street performance is my car has electric damping control, EDC, and so we're going to have to defeat the EDC, and then that button is rendered useless. So we'll have to program that out. So we're going from this to this, so stock to modified, and then in the rear setup is a stock shock, which looks like this. I forget what you call this. What do you call this type of suspension in the rear? We've been asking this forever, and I don't know. Yeah, multi-link. I don't know what it's freaking. No, it's not multi-link. It's not McPherson. It's spring and shock separate. We'll call it. I forget what the technical term for that is. But you have the stock shock, stock bump stop. This, when you do the dyno setup, doesn't change. And then you add their linear spring. These are Hyperco springs. I'm not sure what the spec is, because that's not telling you what the spring rate is. But then you have this cup, or this you have this adjustable sleeve. And notice where I am. I'm like right on the edge of how low you can go. And so the disadvantage of using stock shocks is that you're limited in what the shock can handle, how much travel it has, and so I wanted to improve the shock so that I could go lower, which is not the responsible thing to do, but I want it to be freaking low, and it's my car, so luckily I get to do what I want. So this is where it gets complicated, and this is why I think you should just shoot an email or go to 3DM Motorsport, shoot Barry an email, say I want to do the same thing Matt did to his E92, or I want to do this and that differently than what Matt did to his E92, and he'll build you a custom kit. So this is a custom, I believe these are Vorschlag camber plates, custom spring rates, and I don't think he does anything to the DFE, to the valving. But this is a Öhlins Road and Track kit, slightly modified and set up to my specification. So I just got off the phone with Barry. I have the main change in the front, of course, the camber plate that's installed is a change. So we're not going to use the stock top hat. So we have full camber caster adjustability. He sends it caster set, so you shouldn't have to play with caster. Only camber when we go to the alignment rack. This has a 70. So these are 70 newtons per millimeter. It comes with a 60. And he takes off. It has a normal beehive spring that he goes to a normal or a smaller, or whatever you call the smaller spring. Both are linear, but this one doesn't have the one that pokes out, so you have more room to work inside of the underneath the car. You don't have to worry about wheels, contacting the spring. So the way that these shocks work, so most high-end shocks have a single preload height adjustment, and then you would change the spring or you would add a helper spring. In order to maintain shock travel, at least this is how I understand it, in order to maintain shock travel, the Öhlins, and I know I'm not pronouncing that correctly, it's just how we say it in the US. It's like Ohlins or something like that, or we're gonna call it Öhlins. So this has a independent adjustment or has a cup that the shock spins in. So we essentially set the starting point for shock travel, but we're not reducing shock travel. So we should maintain ride quality and full shock travel even with the car lowered. Now, I got all cranky last night because I couldn't get it to low the way I wanted to, staying within the specs within the manual. And then I talked to Barry this morning, and good thing I did, because otherwise I've been yelling at the camera about how I'm going to get the next suspension, because this one isn't going to work. But the recommendations here say that you shouldn't go, you only have plus or minus 15 millimeters of adjustment, and the preset height is 20 millimeters lower than stock, which means that's the same height as the stock ZCP car. And so what I didn't know, and we're going to fix this on the front, is I had set the collar in the front, I had set it to here thinking that's all the room I had to lower. Well, it spins past the last thread, because the collar it spins another 10, 12 millimeters past where I have it. And so in order to get it to the height I wanted it, actually it's still not as low as I wanted it, I had to take the preload out of the spring, which meant that under any kind of full droop situation, which I probably will never experience, we don't want the spring bouncing around like this. So Barry says a millimeter of preload is all you really need on this. So once I reach, I'm now somewhat loaded, and so I can come a few turns. Doesn't have to be exact. We just want the left and right side to be the same. Then that should be a sufficient amount of preload that under full droop, which I'm probably never going to experience, the spring isn't going to bounce around and make any noise. So I'll take my caliper, I'm going to measure this side, and I'll set up both the right and left side at the same spec, and I'm going to go all the way low and see how it works. The rear, the factory manual suggests that the preload on the rear spring should be 37 millimeters. Now, the way that I get this is it's 37 millimeters from the bottom, or from where the spring contacts the spring perch to the top of the car. And so we're talking about this section here. And so when I set it at 37 millimeters, that means that the car was sitting that much higher, whatever that is. 10, 12 millimeters too high, higher than I wanted it to be. And so what I did is, in order to hopefully maintain some ride quality, I took the shock, which has a recommended 223 millimeter distance from the top here to the base of the cup, and I took 15 millimeters out of this, I moved the shock 15 millimeters down into the cup, so that way theoretically my starting point of travel would be you know, the same, I guess this, I don't know how you would say it, but the same starting point as the spring, if you will, if that makes sense. So I'm offsetting my change in spring preload by lowering the shock so that it essentially sits in the same place as what Öhlins would recommend. If that makes sense. Doesn't make sense to me, so probably doesn't make sense to you. So let me double check that since I just messed with it. So the regular, the recommendation, it comes set up at 223 millimeters, and I have it at 200, and what is that, 8 millimeters? Come down a little bit. So you can see this thing here loosens up, and then you can spin the shock within the cup. Öhlins is the only high-end suspension that I know of that uses this method. Most of them have a single height and preload adjustment via the spring. And the uniqueness of this is that theoretically allows me to lower the car but maintain the same stroke. And Barry was explaining some other voodoo science to me, something about the E92's rear suspension. There's a multiple, so the shock travels more than the wheel, or something like that. Anyway, just email him, he'll tell you what you need to know. I just want it to be freaking low and look sweet. So that's what I'm working on, and not jar my brain. All right, so I'm gonna raise the car up. We're gonna take the front, I'm gonna fix the way that I have set up, so I'm gonna add some preload to the spring, and I'm gonna bring this cup up into the, bring the shock down into the cup. And then hopefully, you know, I'll get the right height without the spring bouncing around at full droop. And you guys are gonna get some serious bonus footage today. Can't say that very well. Bonus footage. Because we have our dry ice machine here, and I did some dry ice cleanup here on each wheel as I've taken it off. That's the freaking dream. Mike's over there taking photos of it. We should have it up on the site here soon. And the coolest part about the whole thing, it works on my 11 CFM compressor. So if you have even just a basic 2 or 3 horse piston, you'll be getting, you know, 18, 19, 20 CFM. You can run the machine pretty easily with something like that. So we'll show you, give you a little sneak peek on that as well. The thing that's most exciting to me about the dry ice prospect is for all of you that are, you know, up in the great white north that, you know, can't wash in the winter. You could, dry ice doesn't clean, like it doesn't do the final cleaning, but it could certainly get rid of all of your like salt and all that junk, and you do it without water, so you can even do it out in the driveway, even if it's minus something degrees, minus 5 degrees, 10 degrees, whatever, and then you can pull the car in and just wipe off the remaining little bit of dust with a waterless wash or rinseless wash solution, and it can solve your problem. But I'm going to show you all that stuff here soon. But the machines will be live on the site. They won't be live in the US for another couple of months, but we're going to be taking pre-orders. Okay, so the only clunky part here, so notice my spring. Ain't no good, bouncing around. So I'm going to bring and add preload back to the spring. First I need to loosen that. And this isn't critical. You just don't want it bouncing around wrong way. So in order to get get the height I wanted, because I thought I was capped out how much I can lower it, I had to drop the spring, drop where the spring sits by whatever that was, however much that was. That's all I need. Just a little bit of load on the spring. I'm going to measure that so that I can have the same height. Everything that's a little clunky is figuring out where the shock sits in order for the sway bar end link to fit properly. And I think my end link looks good, I think. So I'm gonna put this underneath. I don't need to jack it up too much. Now the other thing that I did is I moved the sway bar end link from the stiffest setting that I had before to the medium setting. I don't know if that's gonna be the right spot for it, but I'm gonna try it. Okay, so now there's a through bolt here that holds everything together. And so I'm going to loosen the bolt so that this cup here, let me show you, because it's hard for you to see on camera. You can't really get these giant cameras in there. And so, again, so this cup is sitting inside of something that's clamping down. So there's a bolt that goes through. And so I'm just gonna loosen that bolt so that this will free up. And then I ought to be able to spin this all the way up the shock so the shock goes down this way and then lowers the car. So not quite as simple to lower this as just taking a spanner wrench and adjusting it like I normally would. There we go. So now I can spin this all the way in. We're going max low, bros. We'll see what it looks like. Gosh, I'm such an idiot. I was so mad last night. I'm like, I gotta ruin the ride, take it out of the frickin' preload when I didn't realize the thing would just spin up in here. Gosh, I'm gonna get like 15 millimeters or more. It's here till like 8:30. Trying to get this back up in here because I didn't put the thing underneath. I'm trying to get it back up in there. Okay, so there's the top. That might be too low now. We'll see. So this is what I was talking about. You have to kind of guess. What you want is you want the sway bar end link to be movable, not bound up, but relatively perpendicular. Just get it so it's loaded a little bit. And we're going to tighten our bolt down again. Okay. All right. So now this turned into like a 1 hour project tops. Is all it took me to do this if I knew what I was frickin' doing. The other side was going to take no time at all. So let's see if I got to put it back on and go up higher now. Let's see how low it is. And we're probably going to run like 2 1/4 camber in the front and like maybe a 1/4 degree extra camber in the rear. I forget what the rear camber is on these cars. Just put 3 on, set it on the ground, see what it looks like. See if I'm taking that back off and going up. There we go. That's real man there. I like that. I think that's the way to go. That's what I want. Okay, side B. Gonna sit a little lower too when I get the I'm gonna do the other side. I put some gloves on so I don't melt my hands off or burn them off from cold stuff. All right, so this little guy is a dry ice machine, cleaning machine. It's a IC022 Evo. We call it the Evo, that's right. And what I'm going to do is use it to clean up the calipers and the wheels and all of that while I'm in here messing with the suspension, which is a freaking dream. And the cool part about it, this one, is it does still work off of my little baby compressor. By baby, I mean $5,000 rotary screw compressor, but this isn't a super high output compressor. All it needs is air, a little bit of ice, dry ice that is. I need more dry ice. Turn my air dryer on because I got one, might as well. I can do a nice little cleaning of the wheels. It's a little easier to do it with the car in the air. So this little guy It's 10 grand, but would frickin' change your life. You're right with the, hopefully, I get scared. I mean, I've got shocked like I was gonna frickin' die. Rubber gloves make a big difference. So the dry ice isn't completely clean, but it does clean it up enough to then you just wipe off the remaining little bit of residual. Anyway, we'll have full videos on this thing. And I just need to get a dry ice subscription. I'm only borrowing this one from Scott. This is the only machine here in the US, but we're taking pre-orders on them. Really, I think if, especially if you're in an air-conditioned garage or you're doing it like in the winter and stuff up north, then, I mean, we get you a Jenny compressor for $2,000-3,000. You're good to go. Yeah, that's pretty much the most amazing thing ever. That's all I have to say. So then after a little dry ice cleanup, then all you have to do is just spritz the wheel down. Now this is a secret Mormon prototype. Basically what this is their new drying aid called Slipstream from B&B. And I told them, take the frickin' color and take the scent out, because all the color and scent does is make the stuff a mess. It makes your bottle all janky. We're not babies. I don't need to call it Matt Mormon's secret detail juice. It's just frickin' drying aid. So that's gonna be the new genius marketing concept of mine. I should probably show you so you can see what we're doing here, which is to use a drying aid. In this case, I've taken off most of the really hefty funk, and now all I'm doing is just wiping off the residual from the dry ice clean up here. So think about this as a concept. Now, if it was my paint in my car, I'd do it a little bit more. I'd be a little more gentle than I am with my wheels. But think about, you have salt and sand and dirt and crap all over your paint. You could dry ice clean it. Probably cost you about as much. Dry ice is 40 cents a pound. You probably need two or 3 pounds to clean a whole car, and like a normal winter cleanup. And then you can just detail spray wipe it. What am I doing? I got sidetracked. Forgot to find. So I'm just. You think 2 or 3 more? I mean, I only put. Yeah, maybe 5. Yeah, maybe a whole hopper. Maybe a 1.5. So yeah, maybe let's say 10 pounds. 10 pounds at 40 cents. $4. Not too bad. But you have to have the ice on hand. That's where you'd have to have a service. It would have to be where you would be, you'd be cleaning your car regularly like most of you are. But man, and I think that we're gonna continue to innovate, and maybe these machines even come down in price over time. But I know I'm gonna have one here and at my house. And I'm gonna have dry ice showing up. Probably just here, and I'll take some home. I'll have a little cooler or something, I can take it home when I need it. So it won't completely replace touching the surface. But the main purpose is to clean up plastics and engine bays and do the detail. Like getting some of these little nasty spots that I don't normally get to. Touch some metal though. There's another spot right here that I didn't like. That's, oh shoot. About to get, oh, okay, not too bad. For whatever reason, build up a lot of static. So my wheel's clean now. Little bonus footage for you. I'll clean my caliper as well. I want carbon ceramics for this car. That's another thing I'm gonna do. The next thing I'm gonna do to mess it up. Okay. Back to our regular scheduled programming. Suspension time. So we need to take our EDC module off, which I already did. And take that off, and this is just gonna sit in here, I guess. I got 3 13mm bolts on top, and that one bolt you saw, and that's basically it. I'm not even gonna take, this time I'm not even gonna take the brackets off. I'm gonna leave the bracket on. I'm not gonna take the bolt all the way out. This is pretty gnarly to get out if you're doing it the first time. It's hard to get the suspension to dislodge. But since we've already done this Dynon aftermarket thing, it should come out pretty easily. So let's get the pole jack in place so it doesn't drop as aggressively. Actually, let me take these 13s off first. So in the dry ice video, we clean these things that notoriously turn white. It's freaking sick. So again, I think I'm gonna have to take it out. Now I need to get that 13mm out. Let's test the validity of the Viper chairs. Can I sue myself if I hurt myself? Okay. That was the easy part, getting on it. The question is, I don't know if my method just worked there. I don't think this is gonna work. Shoot. Shoot! Gotta put the bolts back in. Trying to avoid having it sit on the brake line. So if you were doing a stock suspension, you'd be hammering, jumping up and down on the rotor to get this to release. But since we'd already done it once, not too bad. All right, we're gonna go have some lunch. We'll be back in a few. Okay. So I kind of forgot to, I knew I was gonna forget this. There's a headlight leveling sensor that I've done this many times before, but I forgot to disconnect, so I'm hoping I can push it back together. So, same procedure as the other side. I just stick this thing under there and jack it up in place. Pretty simple. But I'm not sure that these end links are gonna work. I always have to make things harder. So we would have been done. But no, I've got to jack things up. This little tube, you're supposed to disconnect so you don't rip it off like I did. So now, got to get it to go back in, which is not easy. All right, bros. Got the shock in, fixed the leveling sensor. Just had to use a long pair of needle nose and just keep working at it. And the problem is as low as I am, the sway bar end link mount point is it's too short in order to get the sway bar in a proper decent position. So I had to order some HP Autosport adjustable end links, and I ordered some custom size. So I ordered 11 to 13 inches of adjustability, so I can play with it. But stock ones and the Dynon ones are too long. So what I'm doing here is just checking and making sure I have the same preload setting on both sides. I'm going to the very bottom of the thread to the very bottom of the spring perch. I'm going to make sure the other side is the same. That way it's equal. Oh no, it's dead on. Okay, I'm good. Same preload on each side. Make sure we're somewhat tight. Yep. Okay. So I'm gonna put the brake lines back on the other side, and then put the wheels back on, and then we'll check our height. Brake line, speed sensor, wear sensor. Let's put that back in place. Squeeze our brake line back into the spot. Okay. So let me tighten up the top nuts. Sure does look pretty. So I think these were 20 Newton meters. This time I'm using my torque wrench. But before I do that, I just want to let's go as little camber as possible, just for now. There we go. That's how you adjust camber. Push in, pull out. So that's how they'll do it. The alignment rack. This is a lot less than you'd think. That's why Barry from 3DM sends us a lot Nylox instead of regular nuts for the top here. Okay. Put my wheel back on. Let's see what our height looks like. And I think we'll wrap it for today to the rear Monday. I quit. I got a podcast to do anyway. So we'll just put our EDC sensor cover, just pop it back on there. These things always pop off. I don't know why. It seems like they make a good seal, but then I come in here and it pops off when it gets hot. It's always done that on both of my E92s. Okay, good. How clean that wheel is. Looks sick. We like to see that activity. It makes it look like we're industrious. Got a big Milwaukee shipment. Trying to get our shelves restocked so I can then start to build our master collection, because we actually have it in stock. I still don't think we have enough stock yet. That stinks. I wanted to put the sway bars on and take it for a drive, but not going to happen today. Good driving around without sway bars. Boom. No more granddad height. This is proper height. No more baby height. Where's my dry ice machine? I still got ice in here. Nothing left. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll come up a little bit, but now we're talking. That's what I wanted to see, was nice lowered height. The E92 looks great when it's low, not when it's got gap. So now I have no gap. It's just no finger gap. So anyway, that's the front suspension. We'll do the rear suspension next week, next video. Got some more work to do. Thanks for watching. See you soon.